Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mimi, and on behalf of the team, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this Agora talk with our fabulous guests today, E.Niblock and A.Tarabzouni. Let me quickly introduce the pair before we see actually the work. And I will start with E.Niblock. Ellie is Irish, living and working in London. She just finished her Master in Fine Art, Central St. Martin's. Ellie is a multidisciplinary artist working primarily with sculpture and digital technologies. Ellie explores in her work the possibilities of how materiality and technologies can alter the viewer's perception of experiences. And that's one key element for this project. Ellie already participated in group shows nationally and internationally, notably at Tate, the Yorkshire Sculpture Park and the V&A. So now let's move on to Saudi Arabia with A.Tarabzouni. Alaa is an architect working and living in Riyadh. She has a master in architecture from Newcastle University in the UK and the Pratt Institute from New York. As an artist, Alaa uses context as a medium, and we can see that in her work focusing on urbanity and the built environment. Alaa participated in group exhibitions in Jeddah and Riyadh. She also co-curated the exhibition Pooch, which was a progressive group show with emerging and established artists. So ladies, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to Agora Digital Art. I was really impressed by your collaboration that combines with the best skills from both of you. This project, With Love from Nowhere, is the fruit of the digital residency called Connect Me, organized by the Arab British Centre here in London. The project pairs artists from the UK with artists from the GCC countries such as Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. So the digital residency was not only to collaborate with other artists using digital tools, but also to present the end work in a digital format. I let Ellie and Alaa explain much more about all the concept and the project.
Thank you so much, Mimi, for the kind introduction.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. We have like a presentation that we're going to show you of kind of the website, kind of screen recording of it, and basically, it's mostly going to be talking about our process and how we work together, our like experience of the digital residency. Yeah, so I came across the opportunity literally like a few days before the deadline was coming up, and I applied on the last day for the virtual residency. And I think I applied for it because I really wanted to keep developing my practice. I just graduated from Central St. Martin's during a pandemic, so I was really keen to keep working and expand my networks, and also just like to collaborate with another artist because I'd never done that before one-on-one. So it was like super exciting to me.
I think my rationale for applying, I also applied on the last day. I had pinned it or like bookmarked it on my Instagram, but I applied on the very, very last day, and I think I probably sent things right before the deadline as well. The reason why I applied to the residency was because I was hitting, Saudi was in a really kind of harsh quarantine earlier in the pandemic as well. So I hadn't left the house in a while, except for very necessary things. So it was interesting to get an opportunity to connect with someone not in my immediate circle, because how do you meet people in a pandemic? I think that's a really interesting question or issue that I think we were both facing as well. The format was exciting. That was a digital residency. Like, how would that actually work? I think it worked out really well, and I think we'll go into the project now, probably talk about the process, because I think we were both very skeptical of, excited but skeptical of the format.
Yeah, so this is just a screen recording of the site. It was built for mobile as well, because we were kind of going back and forth with the idea of making a site for people to look through, but would they necessarily look through it on the desktop, or what would be easier? So we ended up going with mobile. But after we had a few initial talks at the beginning of the residency. We met the curator, Alfredo, and we met all the artists together. That's how we first met. So me and Ella were kind of put into a Zoom room together. We started talking to each other and try and get kind of the key elements that our work had similarities. I think the thread that brought us together was exploring the physical and the digital environment through sculpture and through architecture. So we did come from quite different backgrounds, but that mix of architecture and sculptural worlds ended up being quite interesting as a combination. We explored like place and scale, and helped us develop our project further?
Initially, when we were thinking about it, like the very first idea we had in this kind of almost like blind date that me and Ellie were on was to have some sort of physical object that she would create, because she works in like sculpture as a medium, and I would make some sort of zine to accompany it as well. So they were supposed to be very tangible things. One of the things that Mimi, you mentioned at the beginning as well, was that the output of the residency had to be online, and that limited quickly to things like a website or a blog or an Instagram, or the other girls that were also on the residency with us did a video that they hosted on some sort of video sharing website like YouTube or Vimeo. So it was interesting to kind of think, okay, so no, it can't be something that's like a physical object. It has to be online. If we're going to do something that's going to be, instead of doing something that is digitized to go on a website, why don't we just have that be the object that we create? And it was really, really interesting, because the first thing I think Ellie did that was really, I think, intelligent and very clever was set up a joint email address for the both of us so we could sign up for things and have access, like the same password for everything. And yeah, and I think that really kind of, the website came a little bit later, but the idea that something that we'd create together on some sort of platform was the main idea that we had. The video that you see now is, I think the intention is for it to be viewed on mobile, and I think it's very important to look at it on a mobile, not a desktop. We became website designers as well, like throughout this process. It's really, really difficult to have like user experience in mind when you're doing this. The mobile is such a more intimate thing, and this was also at the height of like Zoom calls and Zoom meetings, and just everyone was getting super zoomed out. So one of the things that we were thinking of was like, okay, if I see this link on Instagram, which is how both of us heard about the residency to begin with anyway, will I put my phone down, open up my laptop, type in the URL, or like sign into Instagram through that? We're like, that's so long-winded. People are probably just going to see it on their phone anyway. So that was the decision to go down that route. And I think it's very an interesting model to have.
So we used lots of digital platforms to connect and to communicate, and that was the aim of the residency. That was kind of the brief that we were working towards in a way. I mean, that kind of drew me in anyway, was kind of working online, especially everything, how the art world is going, and like the future of like collaborating together online as well. So we used WhatsApp a lot to kind of communicate with like work in progress photographs and videos of everything that we were up to. We would like record our laptop screens and just kind of at the end of the day send like, okay, this is what I've been up to today. I'm just going to send you the laptop screen just so it's easier just to keep on track of everything. And we would use like voice notes as well to communicate, and it was like a really useful way of working, I think, because we're using social media anyway to connect with our friends, and it's just like kind of felt like a comfortable way of working.
Or two interesting things that happened was in the first initial meeting that we had with the Arab British Centre and the curator Alfredo on the project was, I don't know if anyone is aware of the other pair that were doing the residency with us as well, but they have very similar practices. They both focus about sex and sexuality and also gender studies, notions of identity. And then for the both of us, like I remember when they first sent us like the links to everyone's like portfolios or websites or Instagrams, I was looking at Ellie's, is like, this is like nothing like what my practice looks like. And I think we were both intrigued, but maybe a little bit concerned as well, to be like, oh, I hope this isn't a lot of compromise in like developing this joint work. And I'd say truly, I think there's no compromise whatsoever. There are things that we changed as we were going along, but I think always in agreement. I don't think anyone had to compromise for someone else's kind of idea of what this should be. So I think that was interesting, seeing Alfredo's answer and our British Centre's idea of pairing us, was because we both dealt with scale and kind of place in the more abstracted notion of the word. So it was really interesting to have that be the kickoff point for our discussion. The other thing that I'd say was really interesting as well with all these platforms is it was so much fun to have a sort of a contemporary pen pal in a way. I think this is a little bit cringy when you look at the first text, it's like, hi, this is me. And you're like, yeah, hi.
I know.
And then towards the end, it just becomes like an unapologetic, like 5-minute voice note, or like a WhatsApp text that's insane where you have to click and it says read more and you have to keep on scrolling. So I think we became friends quickly through this whole experience, because the residency was also so short. It was only 4 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I'm just looking back at that conversation, actually, the screenshot, and it's so funny. We're like, hello. But we actually just, we ended up working so well together, and we became really good friends. And it was just like being back at the studio, working together, and just like kind of having the video call on in the background and like just continue working. Yeah, I loved it. I really loved it. So the next kind of part to this is really talking about what kind of process we use and how we created the work and kind of inspirational platforms that we use to get the ball rolling, I guess, in terms of the project. So we created this Pinterest board and put anything that we were inspired by kind of visually, aesthetically, and it was kind of a good way for us to talk about how we were going to move forward with the project and stay on the kind of same page. Yeah, we kind of decided what aesthetically we wanted a wee bit after a few video calls. And I think this was just a good way to kind of picture what we were both expecting from each other and what we were both up to, right?
I think just talking about something and being very descriptive can be sometimes deceptive because it's so open to someone else's perception of what's going on. So I think the Pinterest board was really important to be like, this is what I mean. Is that what you're understanding as well when I say this, just to make sure? And we were also using it to look at like, how do you represent place as well? So I would say that the work on the website doesn't really aesthetically match with what's going on in the Pinterest board, but it was giving us ideas of like the early notions of like, what do Atlas pages look like? And what do you need for these things as well? How little information do you need to depict a space or a place as well, or a feeling of scale, which I think you can see in kind of all of these images that we have in the background of this slide.
Mm-hmm. And the WhatsApp kind of screen recording as well is me kind of sending pictures of my surroundings, work in progress pictures of the sculptures as well, because I was creating some sculptures in a studio and then we were using like a lot of lo-fi apps like Trinio, which is a 3D scanning. It basically allows you to convert photographs to 3D models. We used like lots of different apps as well during the process of making the work.
This image is so striking to me. So every time I spoke to Ellie, she was in a different location. So for the 4 weeks of the residency, every time I talked to her, the backdrop was something different because you were in London, Harwich, and then back in Northern Ireland. Yeah, so it was always something different whenever I spoke to her, which was so insane in a time where like I was like 100% quarantined at home, couldn't leave. And this kind of started framing conceptually what the work would be. So it was about kind of the notions of quarantine and placelessness and the home and what does that actually mean in like a very, very odd time. And I think these screen grabs from the text messages that we have are so interesting because I was telling her, we were on a call once and it started getting dark behind me in like this exact same spot with this window. And it was because there was a sandstorm, like a dust storm, which I didn't realize that Ellie couldn't comprehend even what that would be. I was sending her pictures like the sky is going to turn orange in a little bit. And the background that she has is like kind of this estuary in Harwich that is just like no man's land, like just like shipping containers of nothing. And it's just these ideas of like logistics, like nowhere, like just limbo was the main idea that we had for the project, coupled with the early notions that we had of like placemaking and scale as well, something that we were thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was like moving out of my flat in London right at the end of July, and then I got the opportunity to work in Harwich. I was doing a physical residency, and I kind of jumped at the chance because I wasn't. Everything was kind of seeming to get a wee bit better with the coronavirus, and we kind of had like open studios as well. But we were doing like a track and trace thing, so we had like a few people come in and out, but mostly I was just really inspired by the surroundings of the place because what the video in the background there is, it's a place called Felixstowe. So you can kind of see it from Harwich. Felixstowe is the largest shipping container port in the UK. So it was just like really different, like quite inspiring to be in a new place, especially after being in lockdown for so long as well.
Mm-hmm. When we started thinking about the residency, so the residency actually had a really good budget for production, which was separate from the artist fees as well, which is really kind, I think, of the British Centre and kind of on the artist side as well. These things can be a little bit funny sometimes. So one of the things we were thinking about is like, okay, to bridge kind of this connection, we're thinking about like being pen pals. Why not send something through the mail as well to ground this experience in something physical, but also in like kind of a shared reality. So on the first week of the residency, we had decided that we were going to kind of follow Ellie's practice in the sense of making these sculptures with some prompts as well. We were going to make them out of found objects because Ellie usually uses found objects anyway, but found objects from Saudi and combined with her techniques, which we'll see later in the presentation as well. So the first thing I did was put a box together of found objects with some prompts from Ellie about like, I'm going to cast them, I'm going to make molds, so they have to have like texture, they have to be interesting, the scale is important as well. And that was a fun kind of hunt at home as well. For like, I think I sent you the most worthless box of stuff as well. It probably cost more to ship it than anything that's inside the box as well. But that was kind of a very fun way to ground it. And it got to Ellie the last day you were in London, I think.
Yeah, the last day. Mm-hmm. So I was like patiently waiting on it, like, please arrive. Like, what's going to arrive? I don't know, but I'm waiting on a random box. But yeah, it came on the last day, thank God. So that's a video of me opening the box and unboxing the package that Alaa had sent. So I had no idea what I was going to expect from any of the objects. So all I knew was it was prompts that Alaa had collected, found objects. Yeah, so I was really excited about the textures that were on some of the pieces. And yeah, it's just like so many random objects. I'm just looking back. So yeah, I casted a lot of them with latex. And because I was doing physical residency, at the same time, I had a studio space to kind of use all my material processes. And I was basically thinking about how I could incorporate these objects into my own material processes when making sculptures. So yeah, that was really exciting to open that box and see what was inside. That's a video of me making the work in the studio. So I used it's called casting resin. So you mix it together with a catalyst and it hardens in 30 seconds. So what I wanted to do was I placed the gold beads inside and then I started to kind of pull them away and it would create like hollow shapes. And I kind of added color to that afterwards as well, which is this final picture. So that was the first object, I think, wasn't it? The Despina. Yeah. That was the first one that I finished. And then after I finished it, I 3D scanned it. And then I sent it to Alaa to manipulate it using some digital softwares, which was Rhino. So Rhino is a 3D modeling software predominantly used in architecture, urban design, but also in like jewelry making. So it's kind of scaleless. It's a vacuum. And the prompt that I had for Ellie after sending the objects, she prompted me about textures. And my only thing for her is like, think of topography when you make these things. One of the things that we quickly kind of gravitated towards, because they're just beautiful drawings, is the idea of having contour maps. And contours show you elevation, basically. So each line shows you that it's getting closer to an elevation. The closer they are together, the steeper it is as well. And it's a technique that I've used in Rhino for architecture anyway, when you do landscaping. And it was interesting to see it with the objects as well. Because you see them in this void of kind of white in Rhino, it again is this idea of like placelessness. It was really interesting to do. Despina, the image that we just saw in the previous slide, was the first object that we had, and the names correlate to a book that we were given as a reference by Alfredo, so the curator, and it's called Invisible Cities. It's quite frequently used as, I would say, not concept, but some kind of kicking off point for a lot of artists as well. So it's 55 cities, and they're all female names. They're all fictional, and the book is, I would say, tread the line between like prose and poetry. So it's very much descriptive text about places that don't exist, but descriptions that are also very difficult to comprehend. It kind of fit beautifully with what we're trying to do with the project as well. I mean, I would also have to say, like, the residency was great because we could share our skills together. We both had different backgrounds, so it was really interesting because I'm just looking at the Rhino video here, because I remember Alaa's screen, or her laptop started to crash basically because the software is so heavy on it. And then we were like, okay, so I decided, okay, maybe I can try and do it on my end. So we would use like video calls to teach me how to use the software in such a weird way as well. So I feel like the residency was a really great way to like share skills as well. Mm-hmm. For sure. I think Ellie also knows how to do like one thing in Rhino now that's completely useless, which is like just to contour. I mean, yeah, that's all I can do so far. So yeah, I think that's us finished. If you guys want to ask any questions, or I just see that this last slide that we had up is on the website as well. And because the Arab British Centre, one of their mandates is that it is a bilingual institution and is about like not improving, but just kind of Arab British relations in general. So we thought it was very important to have the website in Arabic, which we translated as well. It was a really interesting process to do. The English did come first just because of the nature of the collaboration, but I thought that was something very, very like kind of important as well, to perpetuate it online, but also make it accessible to a wider audience, both in Saudi and the UK. All right. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and the project. Robert wrote in the chat that a very productive project working on many levels. Indeed.
Eid. I mean, you, you were working really hard. You were very motivated. The question is now, would you consider creating other non-places in that project, or would you do something completely different?
Sure. I mean, so yeah, we were obviously, as we said, we were inspired by Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, and there are 55 different cities, and we chose 3. We actually did start off with 10 at the beginning, and then we were like, wait a second, this is a lot of work, especially because we decided to use sound, like all these different softwares, 3D scanning, making sculptures. So actually, in the end, 3 was enough, but maybe in the future we can, take another 3 on or something. We have the website for a year, so yeah, we'll see what happens after that.
I think that's one thing, but I also think I would love to work with Ellie again, even if it's not on this project. And I really want to meet Ellie in person as well. This is like one of the things that I can't wait for the coronavirus to be over, like for travel to be back on, so we can probably meet up in London or something, which would be so fun. Yeah.
Like, I have a question. Is my mic working? Great. So my question was tying it in with the novel, or was the novel like the starting point of? Yeah. So like, did you guys like start off thinking about doing these cities, or like was it like later on, like the curator said, oh, like this is a nice reference, you guys should tie it in together? Like, was it?
I think it came in later. I think it came in around later in the 2nd week or the 3rd week. I remember it's like a 4-week residency, but the book that we used in the beginning was actually this book called Utopias in Architecture by Nathaniel Coleman. It's a textbook. It's like a university book that I had read when I was in school, and we revisited. So the kickoff was more like utopic places and utopia, or the utopia being better as an exercise, or like a theoretical exercise than actually like a physical place. So that actually came first, this other reference that we used. And I think that was Alfredo's kind of contribution to contextualize the work and give us something else that we have in common. So both of us like now are pen pals, but also like in some sort of strange book club as well as we're doing the residency.
Yeah, it was good because the budget also like gave us some money to buy those books, so we were able to like read some references before we kind of started making physical pieces of work as well.
That's like interesting, putting like the academic textbook with like a creative novel. Like you get like both sides of the spectrum.
I think the more things we got to read and like watch and do together, yeah, even if like separately, like together in like the loose sense of the word, makes it a shared experience beyond just the things that we were creating. So now we have like a shared background and references to put back into the project as well.
We have Michael asked if you could tell us a little bit more what were the advantages and the disadvantages of collaborating remotely.
I mean, that was my first residency that was online. So I was excited to be able to work, from any environment, because I was kind of traveling quite a lot, like across the UK at the time, which is crazy. But so it helped me like able to keep working on a project, also move around at the same time. And also just in general, like working, when I came home, I was like kind of finishing up on things, and it's just like being able to work from a laptop in your room. Is there something nice about that? And I think it helps artists in a way, because you're comfortable and you're doing it on your own time kind of thing as well. So working from home is really nice.
I think the advantages were obviously meeting people, getting help with production costs and things like that. I think was really nice to have in a time when that was very uncertain as well. I would say one of the disadvantages was maybe the UK and Saudi don't have like a terrible time difference, but I do go to bed like 2 hours before Ellie. So I think that was one of the main disadvantages. The other thing that I would say is probably I'm still working at the time. So I have a job, and sometimes it's like slotting in our like conversations or our meetings also with Alfredo in between my other like work schedule. It just is a little bit of like online choreography, but it's not too bad. But yeah, I'd say that was one of the maybe challenges, not disadvantages.
All right. As I know that there are a few artists in the audience, would you recommend your fellow artists to participate in digital residencies?
I would say 100%. Yeah. I think
definitely.
It's really cool. 4 weeks was just about like enough, I would say, but also a weird time where like life was picking back up again. We're in like a weird second wave. I think the UK more than Saudi, because it's cooler right now. So I think the timing was kind of perfect for it, 4 weeks, and also when it was happening. But I think you get to meet people you wouldn't be able to meet just like walking down the street back home. So I think it's really interesting and really broadens your kind of understanding of other people's practices as well. Even the other girls with us on the residency, I'd never heard of them before or their practices. And Alexis is based in the UK, but Rawan is based in Oman as well, and it was interesting to see their perspectives as well. So yeah, I think it's a great way to meet people, and it's pretty low stakes as well, which is, I don't know, you don't have to move, you don't have to get an apartment, you don't have to go do a residency somewhere, get a visa if you're like not from like, somewhere. So I think it's so low stakes. You can do it from your bedroom, which was fun, and you get to meet people.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to connect without that kind of like limitation of travel. And because we would never have, really, how would we have ever met if we weren't like brought together through the residency?
Mm-hmm.
And even working with an organization like the Arab British Centre was amazing, like a really good experience, just like for the future as well, for any other projects that we do. And like we had like a Monday morning meeting with Alfredo every Monday, and it was also a really good way to like check in and like kind of just relay what we've been up to, and he would kind of give us like some help, some feedback as well. So it kind of felt like being back at school as well, with like my tutor, this is what I'm up to. So I found that really helpful, and I'd never done that before. I'd never like collaborated on a piece of work with one other artist. So I found that really interesting as well.
Christina in the chat, in your concepts, were imaginary people inhabiting the landscape, city, places, and if so, how?
I think when we were doing this, when we were reading a lot about utopias tend to either, if people inhabit them in the beginning, people tend to leave them. Utopias tend to fail historically over time. It's very difficult to build something, have the intention of people using it a certain way. You have too many variables, which are the people inhabiting it, for it to ever be used in a certain way. So one of the things that was very, very important, and is kind of a riff of one of Ellie's projects that uses VR as well, and has like the physical objects as well. You can see it in her portfolio. It's amazing. I don't know what it's called, Ellie. I'm sorry.
What is it? The Unity project?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And playing on this idea of scale. So we never had people in any of the renders or the drawings, even like the atlas kind of pages that we have scales for reference for size that mean nothing at all. Like the units don't make sense to the drawing. And I think it's important to have them devoid of people to give you the sense of more scalelessness. So I don't think there was ever an intention. We didn't even talk about like what type of people would inhabit any of the cities. But we did gender the places, which is something that I think in the Invisible Cities, the author does as well. I think he uses pronouns to describe the places. So that's why. So the places are gendered, but we didn't have any people inhabiting them, or the intention of having people.
I kind of I remember Googling so we chose 3 cities, and I remember Googling some of the names and kind of seeing what they meant online. There was a lot of Greek translations. And then that's kind of what inspired the color schemes for the sculptures. And then it kind of just took its own, the kind of materials just kind of led it, really.
Next question in the chat. Michaela asked, which tool did you find useful for sharing ideas apart from WhatsApp? And as we could see at the beginning, Pinterest?
Yeah, I think we used a bunch.
Yeah, we used loads. A main one I think was Sketchfab, because that's a 3D model sharing platform. So we used our Gmail address, and kind of I uploaded a lot of the models from the app.
And then you use Google Doc as well, a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Google Sheets to keep tabs of the budget, so the more boring pragmatic side, not in the presentation, but we did use those. Sketchfab was a big one. The joint website was, I swear, ingenious. It's so easy to keep track of things. We have SoundCloud, a shared SoundCloud account, because that hosts all the audio for the videos, for the pieces. But also Squarespace, which is the platform we use to develop the website, acted almost as a blog, because Ali could go in and edit, and then I could go in, edit, and you could edit live as well. So that was really interesting as a platform, not necessarily for exchanging ideas, but for editing. You could just do it live and remotely, which was interesting.
We kept sharing the link out as soon as we'd made a change, and it did kind of it crashed a little bit. We were I haven't seen any updates yet, but because we were doing it so quickly. But it was a good way to work with another person, I think. So you could just keep updating, editing, changing. So it was perfect for the online working. But yeah, I think we used like most platforms to make something because we had so many assets to the website.
I would say I thought we would use Instagram more, but we didn't.
Yeah, we didn't really. And we didn't really email, but it was just mostly like voice notes, video recordings, phone messages. Because I know that the other girls said that they used Gmail quite a lot.
Yeah.
Emailing each other. But we just mostly used WhatsApp.
I think their things were bigger as well, so they had to like email like really heavy files to each other as well because they were doing a video. So it was like all the different like frames. But yeah, but WhatsApp has been like a godsend for this project, really.
Okay, so I have my little question related to architecture. If you consider this project as a woman's response to the utopic cities created by previous architects such as Andrea Branzi with his Archie room in the 60s and or Le Corbusier with his La Ville Radieuse in the 20s.
I think all of those, looking at all of those precedents was really interesting. The reference in the textbook that we mentioned in the beginning, the book that we were reading, the textbook argues that utopias are better left as exercise in like a thought exercise, and the ideas of utopic thinking are much stronger that way than they are being manifested or built. So I didn't say not in particular. I don't think it is a response to those, but I think it is a fun digital manifestation of places that will never see the light of day in like the real world, or like in like Ellie's handheld sculptures. But yeah, not necessarily. But I think the questioning the ideas of utopia and also the home not being a utopia during quarantine, I think is a kind of maybe a sub kind of thought that we had. But we tried not to make the project COVID related in particular. It's already digital, it's already online, it already does a lot of things because of that. But yeah, this idea of like utopia can be anywhere, right? And it doesn't have to be like an actual space. I think one interesting part that you really need to visit the website, it wasn't apparent in the presentation, is the sound piece that Ellie developed. So this is something that Ellie had developed in a kind of, everything else was collaborative in a sense, like the sculptures were made by Ellie, but the found objects came from me. The drawings were of objects that Ellie had developed. So that was always a thing. But the sound pieces to me were such a surprise. It was something that we discussed, but it's something that Ellie produced all on her own. And I think they're wild. I think I really like them as well. And the explanations of what they are, you can't recognize what the sounds are, but when Ellie explains, I think, which one is it? The one that's the chip shop?
Yeah, I think it's Despina or, no, sorry, it's Zenobia. Yeah, so I was just like, in general, with my own practice, I would use my phone or like some kind of recording device to record my surroundings. It's something new that I've been starting to work with. I think like over lockdown, I couldn't make any physical sculptures because I use obviously like toxic chemicals, so I can't really use them in my bedroom. So I started experimenting with like my dad's Chaos pad and like manipulating sound on like basic like GarageBand or whatever. So it was a good opportunity to kind of play into that experimentation as well during the project. So a lot of the recordings were literally like on the beach or like walking, like spying on, like eavesdropping on people's conversations. I was just like recording people, and then I mean you can't really tell what they're saying, but it was just like the general kind of environment around me. And then whenever I edited them, I was kind of thinking of like the place, the city's kind of personality in a way, I think, and that the sound kind of helped like translate that.
Ellie, you collected a lot of the sounds on your phone, you said?
Yeah, just like recording on my iPhone.
How did you produce the soundscape? What do you use? What program?
So I literally uploaded them onto GarageBand and used like some of the like edits that were already built into the software. And then I used like a lot of like reverb and just edit them to kind of sound how I wanted them to. I did a bit of layering as well with like different sounds too. Yeah, so I would add like 2 or 3. Yeah. But I'm not like a sound artist, but it's like a nice kind of extra layer to my practice, I think. I'm still learning.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, that with sound, there's definitely, it would have been interesting if you guys collaborated on that as well, because it's a weird thing to try and work on the same sound piece with someone that's not in the same space as you. That kind of presents different challenges, but no, it turned out really nicely.
One of the things that was really interesting was in the found objects in the beginning. I wanted to do found objects from the street. So I wanted to like walk around and collect things. But this was in the kind of height of like lockdown in Saudi. I could still walk around the house. Like that wasn't the issue. But I told Ellie, I was like, I went out for a walk and then I was like paranoid that things were covered in like corona, which is so just a silly like paranoid thought. And then I was like, I'm just gonna do found objects from the house because I also don't know if I can ship what's basically trash, you know, like things that I've just got off the street. And I think with customs that will cause a bit of an issue with like all of these things going. And I think with sound as well, I live at home alone and you could hear a pin drop. Like I live a very silent existence and I live in the suburbs. So I was like, okay, I think just listening to the sounds from Ellie is like, oh, I miss people and I miss like water and I miss all of these things, which is really, really kind of like vicariously living through Ellie's sound pieces as well, which is really, really cool.
Maybe in the future you can send me some voice clips of around your environment and then we could edit them together.
You have enough material like me like sending like weird voice notes at like 1 a.m. You could use them.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how people put things together because even with sound artists, some of them have a musical background, but some of them just kind of have a fine art background. And I feel like we always approach things in different ways. I think as musicians, sometimes you're a bit limited by the musical process as opposed to just having that freedom of playing around with sounds, which is kind of what I'm more interested in.
Congratulations for this fantastic project. Your work is really fabulous. On behalf of the Agora team, I would like to thank you for joining us today and sharing your experience. I'll say bye-bye. See you next time.